Hi, my name's Scott, and today I'm going to walk you through how to use COUNTIF and SUMIF functions within Google Sheets. Let's begin. On the left, we have a table with 2-year toy sales. We have the year of the sale, the shape of the toy, the color of the toy, and its cost. On the right, we have 2 questions that we're going to answer using these functions. First, we're going to answer how many toys are there that meet the criteria in green. And then we'll say, using that same criteria, how much did those toys sell for? So let's jump into our first function, which is a COUNTIF function. We're going to answer how many cubes are there. To do this, we're going to say equals COUNTIF. We could either do a singular COUNTIF function if we only are looking at one criteria, or we could do a COUNTIFs function if we want to add more than one criteria. For the sake of making it easier, I always use COUNTIFs functions. So from here, what we want to do is we want to enter the range that we're looking at. In this case, cubes are found in column B, and it goes from B3 all the way down to B38. Once that's been entered, we then want to enter our criteria, which in this case is cube. So what this will say is for each instance that a cube is what's the contents of cell B2, B3, any of those that meet that criteria will be counted. Next, we're going to do the same for rectangles. So we're going to repeat that process. We're going to say COUNTIF with an S. We're going to enter our range. Then we will enter in quotation marks rectangle. And we can see that we have 8 rectangles. Then lastly, for circles, we will do the same, COUNTIFs. We'll enter circle. And we see that we have 10. So now, if we want to find all shapes, we could either do this one of 2 ways. We could do the sum of all these criteria, which would be 36, or we can again use a COUNTIF function. So we can do our equals COUNTIFs. We again select our range, but instead of typing any of the particular elements that we've entered so far, rectangle, cube, circle, we're going to enter the following symbol, which is 2 brackets as seen here. In doing so, we get all. That symbol denotes select all. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to find out the cost associated with these 18 cubes, these 8 rectangles, and these 10 circles. So we're going to do the same thing, but sum ifs. So we've switched from a COUNTIF function to a SUMIF function. Here, what we want to do first is we want to enter our cost. So here it's D3 to D38. Then we can enter our range, which is B3 to B38. And then we enter our criteria, which is cube. And once that's been completed, we can see cubes account for $68. Next, we could do the same for rectangles. One way to speed up this process is to actually just copy and paste your formula. So here, we could copy this and just change this to rectangle. We can see it's $14. And then there's one other approach that we could do, which is here, I'll just make a little modification. Similarly, we can also, instead of putting something in quotation marks, we can select a particular cell. And here you can see circles now account for $58. However, just remember that if you do that, your cell must be the exact spelling of the word that you're looking for. So let's say I add the S back. You'll see it gives us a 0 because circles is not part of the text here. So let's undo that. Now, lastly, for all shapes, we can again do that same method, but we will use our symbol as shown here. So in total, $140 for all the toys. Next up, what if we want to add additional criteria? We have the color here. So in order to do this, we're going to find the number of red rectangles and their cost. So to do this, we can again do a COUNTIF function. But here, instead of doing just one range as well as the criteria, we will need to enter 2 ranges and their respective criteria. So to do that, I will select my shapes first. I'll put in rectangle as we had done before. But then I'll select our colors and their range. And in this case, we want a red rectangle. So I will do that. And as you can see, it's 8. So here, I will do this quickly. So here we want cubes. So I'll switch rectangle to cube. And we want blue cubes. So I'll switch red to blue. And lastly, for our blue rectangle, we can copy that in and type in blue. In this case, there are no blue rectangles. And just to confirm, yes, there are no blue rectangles. So now we'll do this same function, but for calculating the sum of their cost. So in order to do this, what we will do is we're actually going to use our formula to save time. So we're going to copy our COUNTIF formula down below. But what we're going to do is we're going to change this COUNTIFs to a SUMIFs. And then if you can remember from the examples earlier, we need to change or add the range that we're looking to sum. So that would be, in this case, D3 to D38. And as you can see, we've got $14 there. So we can repeat this process, or I'll just do it from scratch if it's easier for some people. So we can do a SUMIFs. Here we want blue cubes. So the other thing that's important to mention is the order doesn't matter. I've been doing it in the same order. We can reverse that. So let's say I want to start with color first. Well, I should do the cost first. So D3 to D38. Then I'll select the range for the color, C3 to C38. As we said, they're blue cubes, so I'll type in blue. And then here we will enter our range for our shapes. And we want cubes, so I will type that in cube. Here, again, $14. So a nice coincidence. And for this one, since there are 0, we're going to just skip that. So here's how to use COUNTIF and SUMIF functions. But what if we want to make this more useful as a tool? So normally, this can all be done via pivot table. And there's not much value in finding particulars like this using these longer formulas. But what if we wanted to create a tool that could do more? So using this year filter, I'm going to create a tool that lets us calculate more than what we've done here. So in order to do this, I'm going to start by doing our basic formulas. So I'm going to do a sum if I'm going to select my range. In this case, I'm actually going to select everything, or I'm going to say B3 to B. So everything beyond our headers. Then I'm going to select our title, or our what's it called, our column or row red, so that it automates some of these processes. I will then select our colors. Oh, sorry, I reversed that. I need to select rectangle. Then I will select our colors. So in this case, C3 to C. I'll select red. Then I will add in what we're trying to sum, which in this case, as we said, is D3 to D. And then lastly, I'm going to select the year. As you can see, I have this little symbol here. That will be what we select as the year input element. So here, this will go A3 to A, and our year will be this. So right now it's saying select all years. When I click enter, I get an error, and that is because I forgot to add the S to the SUMIF function. So now that that's been complete, we could see across the 2 years, there are $14 worth of red rectangles. But what I've done is I've actually created a tool that we can swap between the years. So if I put A1, this will show in year 1 there were $5. If I switch it back to a 2, $9. So let's keep it as all for now. One thing that you might want to do is, instead of rewriting the formula, we can drag this across. So in order to do that, I'm going to freeze some of our frames here. So here first, these need to remain without moving. Same with this. Here we want our rectangle to stay as column G. We want this to remain there, and this to remain there. And here, actually, we don't want it to remain column G. We want it to switch. But for red, we want this to move, and here we want to freeze that. So once you've fixed or locked your cells in a way that you can kind of drag them how you want, you can then drag this across, and we could see that there are 0 red squares. But let me just see. Oh, it's because square doesn't exist, so it's a cube. $54 of red cubes. Here we can add the sum in this case. And we'll do that across all of these. And here we're going to do the sum downwards. So now what? We can continue with the blues. So what I'm going to do in order to make this easiest is I'm going to do this. And instead of it being selected on the red, I'm going to put it to the blue, which is F14 to F15. So as we know, there are no blue rectangles, so that 0 is not an error. As we drag across, we can see that this is working. So right now, what we have is basically a matrix of our total costs. What's nice is we now have a tool where we could see year 1, and we could even compare that to year 2. We could swap between the years, which is great. And let's say we wanted, we can even graph this. So here we could insert a chart. So we could see our different metrics. We could see in year 2 how it changes. So year 1, year 2. But then the great thing that we've done is because we didn't have a limit to where the columns stop and where the rows stop, we can add in more. So let me copy all these and just paste them down and see what happens. So now, if you noticed, the table itself actually updated. So when we select all, we now have $211 worth of red and blue shapes. And in year 1, we could see that the numbers have changed, they've gone up. And similarly for year 2, we could see the same thing. So a tool like this, while it may seem rather complicated, it allows you to do a lot with actual sales data. You can essentially make a scalable tool where you can input new data and compare year to year. If we wanted, we could go into a lot more detail about what different elements we wanted to dive into. We could even plot year 1 versus year 2, or we could create multiple little scorecards that show this data. This is a tremendously useful function that lets you do a lot more than traditional pivot tables. What's great is you can also even create things that integrate with lists. Let's say we wanted, we can actually make this a little more interesting, where we can even put rectangle, cube, circle, and we can do data, actually here, data validation, and we can create a drop-down list and save. So here, I can then switch between a cube, circle, and rectangle using this particular view. So this could save a ton of time. It can do a lot of interesting additional elements. And as you can see, it just ties in to everything else. It's super easy to use. And once you've built out the framework, you can let it go, and you can even pass this along to other people within your sales organization. Hopefully this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. And please, if you have any thoughts, concerns, any additional functions you'd like to add in, please don't hesitate to reach out. Take care.